Welcome guys. Today we are going to look at step 1, which is identifying and understanding argument. Firstly, what skills am I required to demonstrate? When reading the articles that you have been provided, you should be able to identify and explain what is the writer's contention and what are the main arguments used to support that contention. If we have a look at the diagram on the right, the contention is essentially the cheerleader on top. It is the main point. It is their essential thinking. Then we have 4 to 5 arguments. Now, it really depends on the type of article that you're reading. There may be more arguments and there may be less, but essentially they support the contention. Lastly, at the bottom of the pyramid, we have a lot of persuasive language that is used to convince the audience of those supporting arguments and ultimately the main contention. Essentially, all of these elements work together to hold up and support that overall main reason. Let's look more closely at contention. The main contention presents the writer's point of view on the issue. At times, it can be presented early on in the piece, yet at other times, it develops over the course of the article. For example, one of the pieces we are looking at today has the contention: Australian youth should be conscripted into volunteer services. There are some different ways that you can introduce the main contention in your writing. Clearly, you could just write, the writer contends, ... so explain their contention. However, you should be able to interchange some of your language with wording such as the writer asserts that, or the writer claims that, or in a something tone, the writer declares. It's important that you can identify the writer's overall point before moving on to looking at their supporting arguments. Let's look at supporting arguments. So a writer's contention needs to be supported by arguments. These are multiple reasonable points that appear throughout the piece. They connect and justify the main contention. I like to think of this as the writer's reasons for their belief. For example, in the articles that we're looking at, young people should be forced into conscription to build discipline and respect. So the idea of building discipline and respect is one reason that this writer believes that young people should be forced into volunteer services. You can see there that that's their point or their reason. Again, some language you can use to introduce the arguments. Most basically, you could say, the writer argues that young people should be forced into conscription to build discipline and respect. There are multiple other ways that you can say this and give more detail to how the argument is constructed. If you have a look at the box on the right-hand side, there is some language you can use that can upskill the way you discuss argument. So you could say, the writer bolsters their stance by stating young people should be forced into conscription because of this notion of discipline and respect. Using some of these words can definitely improve your writing overall. Another point to consider is how the writer uses structure. This is a very important feature. You'll need to discuss how the writer has constructed these arguments and consider the potential impact of the manner in which it has been structured. Some points that you could consider: the placement of the main contention, the use of headings, subheadings, lists or tables. My favourite one to analyse is the order of the reasons. Why the writer puts one argument in front of another, how they lead in from one point to another, can be part of the persuasive element of the article overall. In addition, shifts in tone are also important. Each argument may be presented slightly differently depending on the tone. These are some points that you should be able to consider. It's important that you practice these skills. I encourage you to use a few practice articles now to identify contention, map out the supporting arguments, and then have a look if you can for any of these structural features.